Hey everyone, it's Tracy Martirana here from Holistic Wellness with Tracy. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, I'm inviting you into my library for my fourth book in my self-development book club. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you might remember that I decided to take on a reading goal this year to read at least one self-development-ish kind of books every month for the year of 2025. Now, I'm on to my fourth. This one I picked up on a whim. My husband and I were walking through the bookstore. It was in January at the time. And as you would expect in January, right when you walk in was a big table full of self-development books. I stood there looking at it because even though I have several books here that I already own, a few that I want to reread, a couple new ones, I was called to these beautiful books. So I stood looking at them and I made the decision that I was going to buy one. And then I struggled a bit choosing which one. I picked up one by Kendra Adachi, who I love. I set it back down. I picked up one by Gabrielle Bernstein, whom I've read some of her books. I like her. She's a little woo-woo for a lot of people, but I really enjoy her. I set it back down. And then I picked up a book by an author I'd never heard of, but the book just looked so darn cute. It's called I Decided to Live as Me. It's by Kim Suhyun. I think it's Suhyun. It is an illustrated checklist for how to stop comparing yourself to others so you can learn to love yourself. So, and it is illustrated with just some cute little, nothing crazy, but some cute little pictures. I'm like, oh, that's an adorable looking book. And I'm not real happy with my choice. So before I get into why I'm not thrilled with my choice, let me just tell you a little bit about it. It is divided into 6 sections. The first one is a checklist for a life that respects who you are. Checklist for living as yourself. Checklist for not being defeated by anxiety. Checklist for living with one another. Checklist for a better world. And checklist for a good and meaningful life. Sounds promising. And I don't want to yuck someone's yum because this book has sold over 1 million copies, and that's another reason why I picked it up, because it says the 1 million copy international bestseller, which made me go, oh, it must be good. And it's not that it's bad. I really think it has its audience. I think I'm just not that audience. I don't know if it is because the author is on the youngish side. I think she's probably like early 30s. I don't know if it's because she's Korean and there's just maybe like some cultural differences, because this was translated. She is Korean and it was translated by Anton Her to English. So I don't know if it's the difference in cultures between Korean culture and American culture. I don't know if it's just like a few things were lost in translation, but I feel like some of the concepts or ideas were good, but didn't feel like they were flushed, like they were, I don't know, it was too high level. Like I feel like they weren't really flushed out in like anything deep enough to be meaningful. Some of the things I felt just sounded a little immature. And then some of the things I actually just disagreed with completely. And again, I think that was the immaturity level. I think, not that it is immature, I just think that, I don't know, I think maybe me as a 50-year-old woman was not the target audience for this book. And part of me is like, well, duh, it was an illustrated book. But it really wasn't illustrated. It has some pictures in it, but it's not like, it wasn't like a graphic novel, graphic self-development book. It wasn't like that. It just has some cute pictures, little drawings. But I do think that there is an audience for this. Like maybe a young adult would be someone that this would be good for. I just think it wasn't me. That being said, there were a few sort of quotes that I want to share with you. There's a couple things that I did really like. There were a couple pieces of advice, a couple things that made me go like, yeah, yeah. And again, none of them are huge or deep or life-changing, but I thought I'd share them with you. On page 17, this chapter is called Don't Be Affected by What Others Say. She says, when someone criticizes you, keep in mind that this is only an individual's opinion, and the individual in question is not exactly King Solomon or Sigmund Freud, which I agree with that. You do have to take criticism very, very carefully, right? Who is it coming from? What is it? There's a quote out there somewhere, and I don't know who says it, that you should never take criticism from someone that you wouldn't ask for advice. And I think that's true. She goes on essentially to say, like, if you receive criticism, rather than feel angry or sad about it, determine whether there's any truth to the criticism. So is there anything that you should glean out of this? Like maybe there is some room for improvement or change on your part. But if there's not, if you don't resonate with that criticism at all, then just let it go. And she actually sort of equates it to a barking dog, that the person who's criticizing you is just a barking dog. Ignore it. I like that advice. Another one in the chapter titled Don't Be Modest to the Point of Low Self-Esteem. She does talk, obviously, a little bit about that topic, but then she makes a statement that says that even virtues, when excessive, overflow into toxicity. And that, again, I think is true and definitely something that people should always be mindful of, because I feel like at any given time, we can always feel a little bit confident in our virtues and spew them a little too much until nobody wants to experience us, right? Like we're just too much. And then there was this whole section that I really enjoyed, and it was called Speak Out for the Right to Respect Yourself. And I don't know, I guess some of these, I just don't like the title because I feel like that's not at all what I got out of this one. The thing that really struck me about this chapter was she talks about and gives an example about someone speaking up for themselves because I think they were at a restaurant. I don't remember the details exactly. They were at a restaurant and someone spoke to them sort of in a negative way, and her response was, I don't deserve to be treated like the server. And her point was like, that was not the right way to stand up for yourself, because what you just did is actually just pushed down someone else. Like the server means you think you're above the server. And it was kind of an interesting way to look at how we stand up for ourselves. And I don't know, maybe not the whole chapter, but I did feel like there was a little bit to be gleaned there for certain. And the last one I'm going to mention was from the chapter called Don't Delay Reflecting on What Makes You Happy. And here she points out that oftentimes we do things not because we enjoy them, but because we want to have done them. Like we want to be able to say like, oh yeah, I did that. Not so much that we enjoyed doing that. So when you take sort of that into account and think about what you actually enjoy, then your decisions over the things you do might actually be a little bit different than when you're doing them just because you want to be able to put it on your resume or be able to just, I don't know, tell your friends that, oh yeah, I did that. So again, overall, very cute book. I'm sure it is for somebody, and I will put a link on where you can get it. I will actually put a link to my blog on this book so you can see a few more words that I wrote about the book versus what I'm saying now. But again, I don't ever want to give a book a bad review because I feel like there is good stuff in this book, and I feel like it takes a lot to put your thoughts onto the page and put it out there in the world for people to read and judge you. So I do think it's very important to know that it's a good book. It's not bad. It's just not for me. And I don't know my audience exactly how old you are. It might not be for you either. But it could be for someone that you love. If you want to check it out, do so. I am sharing self-development books with you for all of 2025, along with my normal recipes and other tips for living well. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.